Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest tonight. For the first time ever, we're going to be interviewing live the #1 best-selling author of any book, anywhere, ever. And the book is the Holy Bible. So you guessed it, whether it's your first time meeting him or you've known him your whole life, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Holy Spirit.
Gee, you got big, man.
Oh, thank you.
I like the suit.
Oh, you know, hey, when in Rome, I mean, it's not every day you get to interview the Holy Spirit.
Oh, please stop.
Oh, that's amazing. Here, please, have a seat. Have a seat. Wow. So, I'm sorry, you'll have to forgive me, but I'm just so excited. The Holy Spirit is literally sitting in the flesh. How do you feel right now?
Honestly, I feel out and about. I feel very whimsical right now. I don't know. I learned that word today. I'm almost over probably 300 languages. Probably. So I mean, like, hey, I'm still working with people on translating this book. So.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. Let's talk about the book. How many people do you think have read this?
Oh, billions, definitely. There's actually a lot of tribes that haven't read this book yet, but we're working on that.
Yeah.
I'm working with a few of my students to be able to go to those areas, so we're really excited. We're so stoked. I do a lot of things. I teach millions of students by word of mouth through ideas. I teach them in a lot of practical ways on how to live their life, pretty much in a way that makes them look more like Jesus. So I do that. What I do is I do a lot of translation work, and primarily I write the Bible. I'm still writing them in different languages, but my primary role is teacher and author.
So, with everything that you do, I mean, it can be easy. I mean, you've got 7 billion children, and you've been doing this just with the earth for 4.54 billion years. It's got to be very difficult, but what is the hardest part of your job?
The hardest part, honestly, I would have to say the hardest part about my job, G, is it's really difficult because with the promise, the cool thing about my father is I'm sealed inside my children, and I can't go anywhere. It's like in the Old Testament where I would literally come upon my children, and instead I'm living inside of them. So the hardest part about that is I feel everything, literally their joy, but also their pain. And when they sin, it affects me, and it's not like I can't leave. So there are times when I want to cry. And I never sleep. I mean, I'm always doing something. So whether it's writing something, it's never a dull moment.
Wow.
I travel a lot too, so.
Well, I mean, I would think so. I mean, you travel instantaneously. That's got to be amazing. I wish I could do that from here to my bed every single day. That'd be pretty awesome.
You can't handle that.
Probably not. So, never a dull moment. That's amazing. I have to imagine. Never a dull moment.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's funny because, like I said, I travel different places, so you can imagine that I meet a ton of different people, directors, actors.
7 billion.
Yeah, people, like Hollywood, man, that's an interesting place. Different tribes and cultures. Asian, I love Asian culture.
In Hollywood?
Yeah, in Hollywood, man, best of both worlds. So it's like that gives me the opportunity to be able to be flexible and work with people in different ways. And I actually remember this one business student, and I was thinking, man, how am I going to be able to talk to this guy in such a way where I can actually communicate and teach my student how he can actually communicate the gospel effectively? And one way that I was able to teach him this, and it was a little bumpy because he takes things quite literal, and so he's a businessman, and I'm speaking to his personality. I'm like, man, elevator pitch, just think elevator pitch, and he takes it quite literal, and I remember he says it like this. He says,
I told you that's why you need to get apples, baby, than anyone. All you want.
Why would you even want an apple? It's a multi-billion industry that completely demolishes the entire
No. What money for sales? Bible doesn't get viruses. It's more reliable. It's more consistent. Duh.
And they have the same exact virus software.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
That does not make sense. Then why would they create two phones with two different companies?
Because Apple stole Android's idea.
No. What?
Yes.
Oh my God. Did you get in?
Are you coming?
No, but I got something even better. Well, okay, so Jesus was talking to this man. Oh, wait.
Bye.
Okay. Anyways, but yeah, it's like they say, you know, like, and rightly so, they say, you know, don't judge, of course, because they're not God. But then for people who really think that way, it's almost it's like it carries that negative connotation.
Right.
And
Because
so,
no one likes to be judged.
yeah, and so they attribute that to God, and they're like, well, you know, if God judges me, doesn't accept me for the way I am, then I don't want to serve that God. Or they get all these crazy ideas mixed up. Well, before I get into that deeper and explain what judgment is, I mean, consider this. One of the people that I used to teach, Jonah, way back in the day, he would always complain to the Father, and he would just be like, well, you know, a couple of times, you know, why aren't you judging the city of Nineveh? And it was an immoral city. And really, if you look at it, if you read between the lines, his only complaint was, well, God, you're too gracious. So it's like, you know, like the God of the Old Testament. Just to give another quick example, one of my favorite books, and, you know, you're going to hear this for the first time, but Pride and Prejudice.
Really?
Yes.
Not the Holy Bible.
Besides that, so, I mean, I wrote it. One of my favorites from like Earth.
Oh, gotcha, from Earth. With
And-
us, the humans.
Yeah, and so, like, okay, so you have these two characters. You have Darcy and Elizabeth, and he's in love with Elizabeth. Well, in the culture that he's in, he walks into this room, and culture dictates, it mandates even, that he shouldn't be alone as a gentleman in this room with this woman.
Mm-hmm.
So he turns to face the door, and he stops, and he looks straight at her, and he says, "This will not do. You must let me admit that I ardently, and how much I ardently adore you and admire you. And I just gotta tell you that I love you." Gentlemen, that's a winning line right there. Don't forget that. Don't
Good
forget
advice.
it.
Good advice.
Seriously. And she rejects him, and he's confused. He's like, well, what? I just confessed my love to you. And she says this, and it's really powerful, and it drives home the point. She says, you just told me that despite your better judgment, that you still love me. See, love doesn't exist in the absence of judgment, only in the presence of it. So it's like God knows you, and even though He's so holy, you know, to be a just judge, you have to judge it no matter what. Even the parents make a judgment when they discipline their kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, despite knowing that, He still loved them. Just to give another example, filled with examples, Hosea, we told him to marry a prostitute. And even though he knew she was a prostitute and constantly just, you know, being unfaithful to God, it says, go again and find your wife. And in the presence of judgment, he still loved her. And it says it in that book I wrote, Hosea, you know, how can I do this thing? How can I judge you? But I will not do this very thing. I'm going to redeem you. I'm going to save you. And so God, it shows, I'm showing God as someone that's torn in between. But He's saying, despite this, despite that you're doing this to me, I'm going to love you in the presence of judgment. So to answer your question, not in the sense that you mean God, judgment does belong to God, but it doesn't exist without the context of love. So, I mean, personally for me, if it means disciplining my children even, and some will call that judgment, you better believe I'll do what I can to keep my kids from going to hell.
So in essence, judgment from God is a show of His love for us, His children.
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. So I am absolutely humbled and honored that you would take time out of your busy schedule. I mean, it's got to be incredibly hectic. I mean, 7 million people, and you're saving lives here. So thank you so much for taking the time to be on my show for the first time ever, a live interview with the Holy Spirit. Now, before I send you on your way, I know that there's something that everyone who's watching this broadcast, including myself, are wanting to see.
Yeah, sure.
Can you show us a miracle?
See, the thing is, Giovanni, even though you can't see me,
I'm still always here. Unbelievable. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen it in the flesh on my show live for the very first time. Give it up to the unbelievable, eternally old, absolutely amazing Holy Spirit!